Good evening, and welcome to The Way Out Show. I'm your host, Dane McCarthy, broadcasting to you from FEMA Region 5, deep in the bowels of the United Police State of Amnesia. Today is September 1st, 2016. And during this next hour, I am going to show, like I usually do, a couple of videos, two this time. Usually I only show one, but they're both very interesting. One is about the past, one is about the present and the future. The one from the past is only 3.5 minutes long, but it's packed full of very interesting information because it's about Pam Martin's testifying to the Congress about their decision to get rid of Glass-Steagall. Now, Glass-Steagall, as Pam Martin's describes, was put in place after the Depression to prevent another catastrophic economic meltdown from happening, like what happened in 1929. But under the presidency of Bill Clinton, it was removed, and you saw the result. Now, this 3.5 minute clip is very historic. Everyone should look at it and remember how prophetic this expert on what would happen if Glass-Steagall would not take place, it would not be removed, would not be allowed to remain in place, what would happen. The other clip is from InfoWars. It's an interview that Alex Jones had with Nigel Farage. Now, Nigel Farage, in case you have not heard of him, was the head of the UKIP party, United Kingdom Independence Party. He's British. He is also a MEP, a member of the European Parliament. So he is a so-called lawmaker in Brussels who is supposedly representing Great Britain in the European Union. And as he has said in other interviews, the European Parliament is mostly symbolic. It's like the old Senate from the old Roman Empire days, in which basically they just rubber stamped what the emperor decreed. And this is what's going on in the European Union right now. Essentially, the European Union is not a democracy because the Parliament has very little power. They make a really small percentage of the actual laws that affect all of the people in the European Union, including in Great Britain. And as Nigel Farage says, about 70% of the laws in Great Britain that affect the British people and the people in Great Britain, they are not made in Britain. They have no influence over whether those laws are enacted. So they have lost the ability to govern their own lives. And what Nigel Farage and Alex Jones discuss is what's going to happen now since England, European, and the United Kingdom voted in the referendum to leave the European Union. So after those two videos, I will come back and I'll discuss them, and you can decide for yourself which candidate for president would be the better choice in November. So let's roll those two videos.
It was just 60 years ago that 4,835 of America's banks went broke and closed their doors, leaving shareholders and depositors destitute. The underlying reason that this happened was the lack of moral courage by our regulators and elected representatives to just say no to powerful moneyed interests. Instead of just saying no, Washington handed the banks the equivalent of an ATM card to the Fed's discount window to speculate in stocks. At a time when Japan, the second largest industrialized nation, is reliving the 1930s in America, complete with banking insolvency, it is amazing and preposterous that we should be discussing rolling back Glass-Steagall. We also want to remember that the political dynamics that created the backdrop for the banking meltdown in the 30s grew from a corrupt, cozy culture between Wall Street and Washington. U.S. Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas, who knew a thing or two about the matter, having just served as chairman of the young new SEC before he went to the Supreme Court, he called it what it was: chicanery and corruption. Frank Vanderlip, coincidentally, an actual former president of National City Bank, wrote in the Saturday Evening Post at the time that lax separation of banking and securities contributed to the stock market losing 90%. I'd like to repeat that, 90% of its value from 1929 to 1933. The public was so sickened by the hubris and corruption that an entire generation stayed away from the stock market. It was not until 1954, 25 years later, that Wall Street once again reached the level it had set in 1929. There is a compelling body of evidence that suggests a corrupt, cozy culture has once again enveloped the brains of Washington. We can hardly look to the safekeepers of the public trust when they are falling over themselves to reap campaign windfalls from Wall Street. Washington and regulators are quick to criticize moral hazard when it's on foreign shores. Let's look at the moral hazard incubating at Travelers in Smith Barney. In 1996, when the SEC and the Justice Department found that Smith Barney was one of 24 firms fleecing their own customers through 6 or more years of price fixing, no one went to jail. Within the last 2 years, when a special prosecutor found that Smith Barney had bribed the former U.S. Agriculture Secretary, again, no one went to jail. The firm is currently under investigation by various municipalities for the fraudulent markup of Treasury securities. And that, in fact, is enough to hold up this merger, since a criminal charge against a primary dealer of Treasury securities would lend its taint to one of America's major money center banks.
Isn't it funny? You know, when I came here 17 years ago, and I said that I wanted to lead a campaign to get Britain to leave the European Union, you all laughed at me. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you? I come to you from the United Kingdom with a message of hope and a message of optimism. It's a message that says, if the little people, if the real people, if the ordinary decent people are prepared to stand up and fight for what they believe in, we can overcome the big banks. We can overcome the multinationals. We saw the commentariat and we saw the polling industry doing everything they could to demoralize our campaign. On the day of the vote itself, that morning, they put us 10 points behind. And actually, they were all wrong. And they were wrong because what the Brexit campaign did is we reached those people who've been let down by modern global corporatism. We reached those people who have never voted in their lives, but believe by going out and voting for Brexit, they could take back control of their country, take back control of their borders, and get back their pride. Folks, the message is clear. The parallels are there. There are millions of ordinary Americans who've been let down, who've had a bad time, who feel the political class in Washington are detached from them, who feel so many of their representatives are politically correct parts of that liberal media elite. They feel people aren't standing up for them, and they've actually, in many cases, given up on the whole electoral process. And I think that you have a fantastic opportunity here with this campaign. You can go out. You can beat the pollsters. You can beat the commentators. You can beat Washington.
And now he joins us till the bottom of the hour, Nigel Farage, a major historical figure, just a normal businessman, a family man who 25 years ago saw their sovereignty being destroyed, didn't get elected to office till 99, now the fastest growing party, not just in the UK, but Europe. And it's just classic Renaissance, Magna Carta, 1776, whatever you want to call it. It's amazing. I've been interviewing this guy for 15 years. It's been a few years since he's been able to come on. He joins us to talk about all of this. But the parallels between he and Donald Trump, where Trump's never been in office either, are simply amazing. We're going to talk about it all. Here's the Washington Post, Financial Times, and others today saying with globalization in danger, G20 double down and are trying to defeat nationalism. They say if Hillary is defeated, it's the end of the New World Order. This is an epic time. Mr. Farage, who just recently resigned as the head of UKIP, still in the EU Parliament. Wow, talk about a David versus Goliath story. This is epic.
Well, it is. And I think the point about Brexit, Alex, is Brexit is the first victory. We've had little victories. We've had, you know, the odd election that's gone well for people in, whether it's in Germany or France or wherever it may be. But Brexit is the first strike back against this phenomenon of the big banks, the big businesses effectively owning politics, literally willfully destroying nation-state democracy, getting rid of that thing that our forebears actually fought and shed their blood to create and to preserve, our liberties, our freedoms, all of that being taken away, and suddenly, in a referendum that no one said we could win. I mean, literally, nobody thought Brexit would succeed, and we've done it. We've done it, and I think what we've done is given inspiration to freedom fighters right across the Western world.
Wow, where should we begin in the limited time we have here, Mr. Farage? The election here, how Brexit...
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Hillary, shall we?
Please do.
If you can bear it. I mean, Hillary represents everything that has gone wrong in our lives in the last couple of decades. She is a dynastic part, you know, of that class of people who have taken us into an endless series of foreign wars that I think arguably have made things worse, certainly in Libya and elsewhere, not better. She is part of that phenomenon where all that seems to matter now is corporatism. You know, the big global companies who want to set the rule books to effectively put out of business small and medium-sized competitors. They have destroyed, you know, what I believe to be proper free market capitalism, where you or I can go and set up a company, you know, and have a real chance of succeeding. And they presided over a period where the rich have got richer and where ordinary, decent working people have seen their living standards deteriorate. She represents failure. And she, of course, is completely unreconciled to the vote on Brexit, because Hillary loves the European Union. She loves these supranationalist global type bodies. In fact, I think she sees the European Union as a prototype for an even bigger form of world government. And I would just say this to people. You know, I condemned Obama when he came to the United Kingdom during our referendum. He looked down his nose at Britain and the British people. He told us that if we dared to vote for our independence and our democracy, that America would basically throw us off the edge of a cliff, forget about everything we've done and shared together, you know, over these last few years. And I condemned Obama for doing that. So I'm not going to tell people how they should vote in the USA, but let me make it clear. If you want nothing to change at all, if you want to continue with the kind of cronyism that we see with the Clinton Foundation and everything else, if you want things to stay the same, you vote for Hillary. But if you think there's an opportunity here, particularly in the wake of Brexit, for us to start doing things differently in the Western world, then she's the last person you should vote for. And I said at the Mississippi rally, I said, I wouldn't vote for Hillary if you paid me. I said, actually, I wouldn't vote for Hillary if she paid me. And I feel pretty strongly about that.
Well, I mean, it's come out in the new WikiLeaks documents, which she admits are accurate, that she's actually was selling influence to the Chinese president. I mean, this is even beyond espionage. I don't know how she and speaking of the devil, George Soros has tried to crash your country as well and did crash the pound. If you look at this, he wants the internet to be run by the United Nations and basically the EU. He's come out now and said he wants the UN to run our police. And people laugh at that, but the UK got brought into the European Union without ever having a vote. These things are done by stealth. It's a real warning, I think, to the United States.
Oh, yes, it happens incrementally, little piece by little piece. You know, we joined, just over 40 years ago, we joined something that my parents' generation were told, don't worry your little heads. This is just about trade. It's just about jobs. It's just about being friendly with our neighbors. And bit by bit, you know, we finished up in a situation where 75% of our laws weren't even made in the Houses of Parliament. They were made in the European institutions. We finished up with a system where under the European arrest warrant, any British citizen could be extradited to Greece or Bulgaria or anywhere else without the production of prima facie evidence, which, you know, from the country that actually developed Magna Carta, it really is quite a surrender. And we finished up, you know, being banned from making our own trade relationships and our own formal relationships with any other country in the world. And it's like, the analogy, Alex, I've been given, it's like if you get a lobster, right?
Yes.
And you chuck it into a pan of hot water, it will shriek and shout and try and get out because it knows something bad's happening.
They actually shriek. Yes, they yell.
Oh, they do. No, they really do. But if you put a lobster into cold water, right, and turn on the heat, actually what happens is the lobster just gently falls asleep and finishes up being cooked. And I think that's what happened to the United Kingdom. We were put into cold water back in 1970.
You thought it was a hot tub, and you went to sleep and woke up in an EU tyranny.
Yeah, and I was one of those people who 25 years ago, and I don't know quite how or why, but 25 years ago, I started looking at this, and I just said, this is wrong.
By the way, Nigel, you don't like to talk about yourself, but this is a part of history. You were a successful business guy, a family guy, whole 9 yards. It's been in the news. They've taken the bolts off your car's tires. Even the French police said, looked like they tried to kill you. Your airplane crashed, all this stuff. I mean, what made you 25 years ago decide to just strike out by yourself and now epically change the world? I mean, it's a success story for everybody out there.
It's actually very simple. Very, very simple indeed. You know, in every town, in every village in my country, there are memorials, war memorials, to those that fell, both in the First and Second World Wars, fighting for us to stay as an independent, free, proud, democratic nation and to stop tyranny in Europe. And I felt that what the European project was becoming was the very kind of tyranny that those before us had fought to stop. And nobody was asking me or telling me I had to put on a military uniform and carry a rifle. All I had to do was get involved and form a political party and get people to support it. And I've never wavered from that view in 25 years.
The information war, Nigel Farage, incredible. We've only got about 10 minutes left with you before we do another interview.
Yeah.
You've resigned from the party, but you're still in the EU Parliament. You're still working hard. Can you just briefly, for folks that want to know, explain, I mean, I understand that for 25 years, why you've pulled back after this huge victory?
Yeah, well, there are two reasons. One is that there are two different types of people in politics. There are those who want to be something, who want the title, who want the chauffeur-driven car, who want the, grandiose sort of stage to be on. But there are other people in politics because they're in it for a purpose. And my specific purpose was to free my country from this European project. So having achieved that goal, I said, look, I'm not retiring. I'm not moving up into the mountains and living in a tin shed. But I'm going to step back from leadership, and that's going to leave me free to make this argument not just in the United Kingdom, not just in the EU Parliament, but around other parts of the Western world. And when you and I met each other in Cleveland at the Republican convention, that was the first time in years I'd been free without having to represent a political party to go out and look around the world. And I will, as I'm talking to you tonight, I will make these arguments in the American elections, and I will go around the free world saying to people, let's take back what we've lost. The second reason, if I'm frank, is that doing this for a quarter of a century, doing a job that absorbs you 24/7,
it's exhausting.
Leaves you no time to catch a fish, leaves you no time to see your kids grow up. I'm now going to work, Alex, 50 or 60 hours a week, not 100 hours a week.
I get it, sir. I totally understand, and thank God you created UKIP. I mean, you're a model. Everything else. Look at how every EU country has a major Brexit-style movement, and the polls show that we're going to see huge victory here. So I want to talk about that in a moment, how the empire is going to strike back, how the socialist and communist bureaucrats and mega banks are going to strike back. But getting into overall what globalism is up to these days, are they crying foul and saying that they're in deep trouble as a way to get governments to desperately go along with them? Or is it accurate that they're on their heels? I mean, I've got a stack of news articles here saying U.S.-led globalism is dying. And, of course, they mean globalist-run globalism is dying.
Yeah.
With the TPP. Yeah. New World Order in trouble. Soros in trouble. I mean, they claim they're in really, really deep trouble. And I look at the facts. It looks like they are. But then I ask, how are they going to bring us into a depression? Are they going to crash our currencies again? I mean, this is the usual suspects. How is the empire going to strike back?
The empire is bewildered. The empire is befuddled. The empire still cannot, just as I said about Hillary earlier in this interview, the empire doesn't get Brexit because the empire didn't believe Brexit was possible. And now the empire's problem is that it's fighting this argument on several fronts at once. We've got the American elections going on. We've got a big referendum coming up in Hungary on migrant quotas from Germany. We've got a rerun of the Austrian presidency where the right-wing candidate was cheated by false votes. So they've got a real problem. They are fighting us now on a whole series of fronts. What will they do to fight back? I don't know the answer to that yet. And do you know something? Nor do they. Because over the course of the last few decades, all of their plans, piece by piece, to build these new structures, they've won every single battle. Some of them have taken them longer than they wanted, but they've won every single battle. After Brexit, they're in trouble. And I have to say that these American elections, this could be a result globally far bigger even than Brexit. If America, as the leader of the Western world, once again becomes the leader of the free world, well, then I think basically we will have done away with the globalists.
Well, sir, you're right. The Washington Post said 2 weeks ago that Hillary's a referendum and that Brexit was the first domino and that she's the second. And if she falls, they say it's irrevocable because they, in their own documents that we've gotten from BAMP Canada, North American Union meetings 10 years ago, they say, it's key that we maintain stealth and secrecy. If the public ever finds out, North American integration and our plan will fail. That's a quote. I mean, it's like a James Bond villain. We've caught them. You've exposed them. I don't see how they can continue when it comes out that they're dictatorial. But first, since you mentioned Hillary, I don't know if you saw her big national speech last week. She attacked myself, you and others. She attacked Donald Trump like it was bad that he was associated with somebody like you who's changing the world and loved all over the place. Even the left is having to admit you've got good points. And so let's play this clip of Hillary acting like Trump's bad because he's modeling himself after a winner like you. Here it is.
Nigel Farage, who stoked anti-immigrant sentiments to win the referendum to have Britain leave the European Union, campaigned with Donald Trump in Mississippi.
And then Paul Watson in the piece he did on this went on to say, hey, Hillary and Nigel Farage won. Don't forget that part. I think this really illustrates her disconnect, sir.
Well, I just want to, can I please use this opportunity to thank Hillary Clinton from the bottom of my heart for doing what she's done. She's raised my profile massively in this presidential election. She's made me a political football between the Trumpites and the Clintonites, and she's given me an even bigger platform in the United States of America to say to people, we've just won our democracy back. Why don't you do the same thing? So, Hillary, thank you, thank you, thank you.
So here's the paradox. They've got the money, they've got the power, they've stolen control, they got the Swiss bank accounts like the EU bureaucrats that don't pay taxes. You've exposed all that, but people are waking up. They're unelected, they're dictatorial. That's an uphill battle for them. The problem is they're already on top of the hill. How do you see this playing? I mean, in fact, I agree with you. They don't know how to counter. They're panicked right now. I've never seen the media so deceptive. They seem to be doubling down.
Yeah, what we've got to do is to focus on what we can do. And what we can do is to go out and reach the millions, tens of millions of people across the Western world who frankly feel completely disconnected and disenchanted with politics. You know, we've been through these years where, frankly, whichever party you vote for doesn't make very much difference. And where people say, do you know what? I'm not going to bother. It makes no difference. And what we have to do is we have to inspire those people. We have to say to those people, come on, get up off your backside, get down to that polling station, vote, because it's only by us getting together and doing what we think that we can change things. And that's the lesson, Alex, from Brexit. Nearly 2.5 million people who don't vote or have never voted in their lives went out on June the 23rd and turned it into our independence.
Total history. And of course, they're trying to ignore the vote. It's a battle, but they're going to lose in the end. This is amazing.
They can't. They can't.
In the minute we have left.
They can't ignore the vote. So I would say to people, if you want change in America, then, yeah, listen to these shows. Talk to your friends and neighbors. But actually, you've got to get your walking boots
Knock on doors.
You've got to get out and meet people, inspire people. And if you do that, we'll strike a blow against the globalists from which they will never, ever recover.
Absolutely. In the minute we have left, sir, I just want to say that obviously you've not really retired. You're here battling the New World Order globally now. You've actually gone to the next level. And I appreciate your time, your energy, and the risk you've taken for yourself and your family. Of course, UKIP.org, the former party you headed up. And, of course, people can also follow you on Twitter. We'll put that on screen for TV viewers as well. But this is a great historic time. It is a referendum against the New World Order. And I think Donald Trump's going to win if all of our listeners and others do what you say and take action. So thank you for spending your time trying to help America be a free country as well, Mr. Farage.
No, not one little bit. And I'll be back between now and November the 8th.
Thank you so much, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Clean, pure drinking water. You can't survive without it. But where do you get it? Alexa Pure Pro is a brand new, groundbreaking, gravity-fed water filtration system that is like no other. The Alexa Pure Pro transforms water from virtually any fresh source into clean, healthy drinking water, pairing the unprecedented superfiltration power of an all-new gravity block core with a hybrid chromatic shell. It removes up to 99.999% of impurities, including bacteria, viruses, fluoride, disinfectants, volatile organic contaminants, and hormones. Filter capacity up to 5,000 gallons. Stainless steel construction. Easy assembly. Low maintenance. Replacement filters are simple to install. And now, as part of an exclusive limited time introductory offer, you can save $20 off the retail price and get free shipping. This is a limited time offer, so order your unit today and receive free shipping and $20 off. Go to InfoWarsStore.com or call 888-253-3139.
All right, there you have it. Two very intriguing videos, one of an historic nature from way back in the 90s when they got rid of Glass-Steagall. And it's absolutely amazing what they knew and how they pleaded with the Congress to save Glass-Steagall. And we've seen the results of getting rid of it. And Glass-Steagall, of course, is about separating the actual bank from the venture capitalists who are running the hedge funds and the various speculative organizations that are essentially using your money as chips to gamble with. And when they lose that gamble, you lose your money, even though you really don't gain anything when they win. So it's a great game for the bankers to play, but you and I are not part of that game. We don't get to play that game, but for the privilege of us being allowed to keep our money in their bank, that's, you know, we just basically turn our money over to the bankers, and then they speculate with it, and if they lose, it's too bad. They don't have to pay us back. When banks fail, the very last debtor on that list to be paid back is the bank depositor. Everybody else comes first. So it's very rare for bank depositors to get all of their money back. They may get a little bit of it back or part of it back, but they very often will get none of it back. They will just simply lose their money. And this is unfair and it is illegal, but this is what happens when you have criminals who get in charge of the government. And what is the first thing that a criminal is going to do, like the Clintons, when they get in power? They're going to make laws to make their criminality legal for them. And they can just do whatever they want. They have the control. They have the power. And what we're facing in November, if Hillary Clinton gets to be president, is that you're going to have Bill and Hillary, the power team that have done nothing but destroy America and destroy the world and make life a living hell for millions of people around the world since they got into power. I mean, it was bad enough for the people of Arkansas when Bill and Hillary were running Arkansas back in the 80s. And if you talk to people in Arkansas, they will tell you how bad it was. If you were rich, if you were buddies with the Clintons, it was great. But if you were just an ordinary person who wasn't connected with the Clinton machine, then you were out of luck. You got exploited. You got left out. You got cut out of the profits. You got robbed. And you might even have been killed. The list of bodyguards of the Clintons that have died is a very long list. And why would bodyguards of the Clintons be killed? Why would they mysteriously die? Because they know where the bodies are buried. They saw the crimes. They were the bodyguards. And after they leave the employment of Bill and Hillary, they become a liability, and they need to be eliminated. And especially if a bodyguard, a former bodyguard, wants to speak to the press and lay out the cards. A lot of state troopers have been killed. A lot of close associates of the Clintons have been killed. Even those women and husbands who have been involved or been raped by Bill Clinton or molested by Bill Clinton, even they have suffered or died. They have been browbeaten. They have been harassed by Hillary Clinton. So she was the enabler. She is the muscle in the Bill and Hillary Clinton political machine and the sexual exploitation machine, which you're going to see continue. Remember, you saw Bill Clinton have affairs in the White House, which is a scandal for this nation, and he should never be allowed back in the White House. And Hillary Clinton continues to this day to be married to him. If she were any kind of a woman who had any kind of pride or love, she would have divorced him a long time ago, because his serial rapism and molestation of women, and it turns out now even young girls, underage, so he's not only a sex addict, but he's also a pedophile. And we've seen his close friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. If you don't know who that is, look him up. He went to prison for pedophilia. He's a billionaire. He has a jet, which he cutely calls the Lolita Express, which has beds in it and always has a bevy of underage girls in it to serve the men on the jet. I've seen interviews with former bedmates or playmates of Jeffrey Epstein, who had a string of highly connected political figures and financial figures, billionaires, buddies, and who were taking advantage of the Lolita Express, taking rides on the Lolita Express. He has his own private island, even, Jeffrey Epstein, that he brings his buddies to, in which girls are running around naked, young girls. And, you know, we are actually supposed to believe that Hillary Clinton cares about women, cares about girls and children. She doesn't. She doesn't care at all about what happens to the victims of Bill Clinton. And she would even, to even consider that she would be, would go along with this for even 1 minute. I mean, here she's been married to him since the 80s at least. So what is this, over 30 years she's been married to Bill Clinton? And she's still married to him? This is unconscionable. This is awful. This is appalling. This alone should be enough to sour women, American women, on Hillary Clinton. Just the fact that she's still married to Bill Clinton. Come on. Do you care about the plight and the victimhood of women or not? Apparently not. So whatever complaints you have about Trump, his so-called crimes pale in comparison to Hillary and Bill Clinton's crimes. I mean, Trump has never got the lawsuits and the situations that Bill Clinton has got himself into over and over and over and over and over. Those women that he molested or exposed himself to or raped are still there. They're still giving interviews. They're still writing books. And this has been going on for so long. And you have the former state troopers who've come forward. You have the bodyguards who came forward, those who weren't killed, and stated that this is the way he behaved. And it was all the way back when he was governor in Arkansas, and he's still doing it. He has not stopped. He's maybe slowed down quite a bit. He's getting pretty old. But the man has a problem. It's like Anthony Weiner. The new scandal is Anthony Weiner, Hillary Clinton's very, very close advisor, Ada Hamadan, is married to Anthony Weiner. Anthony Weiner exposed himself sexting over and over and over, was caught over and over. His political career is ruined. And now she is leaving him, finally, but the damage is done. This is the type of politician that we're running into. They're not only criminals who are stealing from the American people and stealing from people around the world and murdering hundreds of thousands of or millions of people, but they're also perverted sex addicts. And this is the type of person we want to be leading this country. Trump looks like a choir boy compared to these people. Remember, when Bill Clinton was president, there was a civil war going on in the former Yugoslavia, in the Balkans, in the 90s, between the Serbs and the Croats. Well, the U.S. government picked one side, the Croats, and they started bombing the Serbs with depleted uranium, airstrikes. They practically destroyed the Balkans. They poisoned them with depleted uranium. To this very day, you have elevated cancer levels and birth defects in the Balkans as a result of this absolutely unnecessary bombing that went on for at least a month under Bill Clinton. We think of Bill Clinton's presidency as being fairly peaceful, but we forget about this horrific war crime that Bill Clinton signed on to. And he was the president. He was responsible for making those decisions. So this is just one example. And we have Bill Clinton's record after he left the presidency. Not just Bill, but Hillary. Remember, they're a team. They do everything together. They work together politically. Sexually, forget it. But politically, they work together. Bill is the front man. Hillary works behind the scenes. And you can see the difference between Bill and Hillary when they get up in front of a podium and give a speech. Bill is about 10 times or 150 times better at working the magic than Hillary is. Hillary is absolutely terrible at it. She has none of the skills, the people skills that Bill Clinton has. He's a charming psychopath. She's a sociopath too, but she's just lacking that charm. She has no charm whatsoever. But that's not important. I mean, you can be a president and not be charming if you're honest. But when you talk to a Haitian person about what the Clintons did to them after the horrific destruction of Port-au-Prince and the surrounding area in Haiti, in which the Clintons were in charge, and the Clinton Foundation were in charge of the charity, of the money coming in. There was billions, tens of billions of dollars in charities that came in to help those poor suffering people in Haiti. And guess what? The Clintons kept most of it for themselves. Only about 10% came through. Now, I've talked about this before, but it's important for people to remember this. We like to think that, oh, Bill Clinton was the first black president. Oh, the Clintons really care about black people. Black people support the Clintons. They are used to voting Democratic. I'm not so sure if that's going to be happening this time. A lot of people of color are waking up that the Democratic Party not only doesn't help them, but they rely on them to get them over the top, and they don't care about them at all. They don't try to help them. We've seen under the Clintons, now under Obama, what have we seen? George W. Bush. None of these presidents are helping, particularly, the plight of poor people, no matter what color they are, particularly. In fact, poor people are getting more poor, and even middle-class people are now becoming poor, and a very, very small percentage of people are getting quite wealthy in this country. And it's not 1%, it's more like 0.1% of the people who are getting wealthy. And they're getting extremely wealthy. We have seen wages stagnate for decades. We've seen the price of goods and services go up. We've seen inflation, even though the records or the statistics don't reflect it, because the books are cooked. They're not showing the true inflation rate. They're saying, oh, there's almost no inflation, even though they're printing money like they're counterfeiters in a basement running out $100 bills by the trainload. Obama just shipped $400 million to Iran right about the exact same time that they released some hostages in cash, a plane load of cash to Iran. And of course the policy of the U.S. government is that we don't pay ransom, but the Iran generals who got the money and probably pocketed most of it say that they were very happy because they got the ransom that they wanted. And what the Obama administration said, oh, it was just a coincidence that we did it just before they were released, that actually we were just freeing up some money that had been held in escrow or something, or frozen up for decades, ever since the revolution in, I guess, 1979. Was it 79 or 80? I guess it was 79, yeah. And it was just a coincidence. Okay, that's just one small thing. Only 400 million. Pocket change. So we have a situation in which Hillary Clinton is about to step into the presidency, and do you suppose that anything will change? No. She has stated over and over and over that everything will continue the way it is. Her agenda does not change the Obama administration agenda. The Obama administration agenda followed the George W. Bush agenda. He just continued the policies of George W. Bush. He has not closed Guantanamo prison. In fact, at some point, they're planning on putting American dissidents and terrorists, domestic terrorists, into Guantanamo. That's why they won't close it, because they need it. They think they need it. They need a place where they can put people where they don't have to give them all these special favors, the entitlements that are written into the Constitution, because Guantanamo is outside of the jurisdiction of, supposedly, outside of the jurisdiction of the Constitution. After all, it's in Cuba. So it's rampant criminality on that front. And as Nigel Farage points out with Alex Jones, Hillary Clinton is a corporatist. She's bought and paid for by the multinational corporations and the big banks and Wall Street. That's where her allegiance lies, not to the welfare and the well-being of the American people. Now, I don't know if Trump will be any better. I think he probably will. And why do I think that? I think that because he is hated by the Republican establishment. They want to get rid of him. They've been, his own well-known, well-connected leadership in the Republican Party have been fighting tooth and nail to somehow knock him out. It was a fluke that he actually was able to get the nomination. And it tells us something about the resiliency of the American democracy, the republic, that he even was able to get the nomination in the first place. The Democratic establishment despises him. But the people on both parties and independents really like him a lot. Even those Bernie supporters, Bernie Sanders supporters, some of them, and more than you would expect, are going over to Trump because they do not want to support Hillary. And why would they support Hillary in the first place? When Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was the director of the Democratic National Committee, has stated and admitted that she was working for Hillary Clinton right from the beginning. And she had to step down when the emails were revealed that showed that she was prejudiced against Bernie Sanders from the beginning. And they stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders. Over and over and over, they lied, they cheated, they rigged, they padded. Rampant criminality. She had to step down when the information came out. And what happened? Hillary Clinton immediately snapped her up, rewarded her for her behavior. Is this how an advocate of democracy would behave? Or is this how a dictator would behave? So who is the true dictator here? Who is the danger to American democracy? Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton? who has the record of being beholden to the multinational corporations? When we look at the Clinton Foundation, this is a scandal that is developing daily, getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. The only hope that the New World Order, that the big multinational banks, the power brokers, the Wall Street, the super elite, the super rich, the globalist elite, whatever you want to call them, the only hope that they have is to cheat, to lie, to steal, to kill, to continue their agenda of total, full spectrum dominance of the people of the world, with an EU situation, which is not a democratic consortium. It's a cartel of powerful forces that have placed the people of the European Union under their boot heel. And they want to spread that all the way throughout the world. As Nigel Farage points out, Hillary Clinton believes that the ideal form of governance is the EU model, but taken worldwide. And that's the plan. And it always has been the plan. Incrementally, for 100 years at least, since the late 19th century, with the Fabian Society, you have the sheep in wolf's clothing, the slow, gradually, incrementally bringing forth one world government, a socialist, communist government, fascist. At this level, it's fascism at its very core. When government and multinational corporations work together as a team, a tag team, to destroy the freedoms of the people of the world that have been so hard fought for. This is, of course, inevitable that this would happen. This is the story of the human race. This is the story of civilization. And what's happening now in the EU with the rules that are actually the laws that are passed not by the European Parliament, but by the European Commission, which is unelected and not accountable to anyone. This is the future if we allow it to be the future. Just as in the past, powerful dictatorial figures have taken control if the people will let them, and you have a totalitarian state. This is the way the old monarchs operated. They had godlike powers of life or death over all their subjects. One word from the king meant death. No trial by jury at all. Nothing. No evidence needed to be presented. Period. It was, the law was dictatorial. The king ruled by divine right. He believed that his power came from God himself. Divine right of kings. And right now with the EU, we're seeing they are actually eroding the power that was given to the people of the world by the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta is about 800 years old, and the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution owe a lot to the Magna Carta, just as the Constitution, the constitutional monarchy in Great Britain and other countries around the world owe a debt of gratitude to the Magna Carta. Well, now we're seeing the Magna Carta itself being eroded. So you have the very same people, generations down the line, who are trying to take back the power that they lost over 800 years ago. So it's an ongoing fight. It's the story of civilization. It's a very few people at the very top wanting to increase their power, and the majority of the ordinary folks trying to prevent that from happening and to wrest their own personal freedom away from those who would want to dominate, exploit, and destroy them. And one of the ways that the elite want to dominate the ordinary folks is sexually, because we're all human beings. And so you have people who are in power, and this is what they do. They exploit not just politically, not just economically, but also sexually. And we can't ever forget that. That is why rights, the human rights, the human civil rights that children have, that women have, that people who are vulnerable, whoever they might be, have, they are at risk under a totalitarian government. They are at risk more than any other at any other time. The old kings had the right of, I think they called it prima nocta or something, which meant first night. That meant that the king had the first right to have sex with the new bride on her wedding night, if he wanted to. That was his right. So it's a sexual domination, as well as all the other forms of domination. These are very sick people. That's all there is for today. Have a great weekend and sleep well.